I recently had a question about slipping out.
Yes.
Yeah, from someone who said that their every boyfriend they'd had, like the penis kept slipping out.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons for that is the two things you mentioned, jackhammer moves, where it's like really, really fast, and or two people trying to like, move at the same time. And that can get tough. So if you feel uncomfortable not moving, like you want to be there still, but you're like feeling a little funny about that, which is fine, there are other things you could do.
Welcome to Honey Do Me, a podcast that goes into the bedroom and beyond, hosted by Emma Norman
and Cass Anderson. Here at Honey Do Me, we don't have all the answers, so we chat with experts, educators, and badass changemakers to get them.
We are here to remind our listeners and ourselves that what we're going through is normal, that we are worthy of love and pleasure,
and that we are all in this together. So tell us, honey, how do you do you?
1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
Woo, woo, woo. I'm so good at it.
You're really good at the dog.
I'm
That's like
so
a
good
Saint
at being a
Bernard.
dog. I'm a big dog. Because this week, what are we talking about, Em?
We're talking about doggy style.
Yes, the best of all the positions.
It was literally your least favorite position.
If I'm being honest, it is one of my least favorite positions. After recording this episode with the lovely August McLaughlin, I am very excited to try all of her tips. But yeah, it's never been my fave. I don't think it's very intimate and kind of just feels like you're getting screwed.
You said getting fucked.
I was trying to tone it down.
But I get it. I get what you mean because it feels like you are just there for the person that's given it to you.
Yes.
And you don't know how to interact as the receiver, which is what we needed the most tips on is how, as us as the receivers, how do we be more of a participant?
Absolutely. So we got some really cool tips, some really fun ways to get a little bit more engaged, and maybe some ways to not engage that I have been trying to engage in. So,
oh my God. Some of the stories from I said first times trying sex is how I said it in the episode. So stories from some of the first times of a doggy style. Go. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
We're rhythmically challenged. We can't dance. Emma's a better dancer than me. Emma's actually a pretty good dancer.
Thank you. I was like, I can't dance. You said I was a good dancer before.
You're a great dancer.
Thank you.
But maybe not during doggy style.
I shouldn't dance during doggy style, and I learned that, and I'm here to preach it to more people. So, but you guys are going to get really great tips. What else do we talk about that is really important for you to hang on for?
Some of the more shameful things that we experience during doggy style that we shouldn't be feeling shame about, but we do, like queefing. Are they staring at my butthole? And slippage was another one.
Slippage. You are going to hear all about it. And how to prevent it from doing different practices or how to just like push on past it.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's really important information. And August was so fun. We've also invented like 17 different things with August when it comes to TV shows, different tools, and the future we invented.
This really is an episode of the future.
It really is. Anyway,
if you're looking for innovation,
we got
science, this is going to be the episode for you, honey.
So enjoy, and we'll see you on the other side.
Yeah.
I'm August McLaughlin. I am a health and sexuality journalist. I have some books out called Girl Boner. Girl Boner is also the name of my brand and my podcast.
Wonderful. And what do you talk about on your podcast?
It's a narrated, story-driven podcast about sexual empowerment. So I share tons of true stories about orgasms and masturbation and sexual empowerment journeys. It runs a whole gamut. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love talking to all different folks about pleasure and weird things that happen in the bedroom. There's so much to cover.
I love that. I'm so nosy and I always want to hear people's stories. So you have the best job ever.
I do love it. Yeah, for sure.
That's so much fun. Well, I think what we really want to get into is the position of doggy style. So would you help us out by just giving us a basic definition of what doggy style is for someone who doesn't know?
Yeah. So the basic definition would be when you have two people, one person is behind the other, and you're both facing the same direction. So it's like one person's torso is against the front person's back. And it's basically penetration either in the anus or the vagina using a penis, a hand, a toy, whatever fun thing that's safe to put in there. And yeah, it's great for depth and variety. There's so many great things about it.
I love that. I love, and I've talked about this before, so our listeners are going to hear me say it again. I love when we get a really broad definition for something that we thought of very narrowly in the past, because I know I've thought of doggy style very, very narrowly. So I'm excited to dive into all of the aspects of it and just the different positions. I don't know. I love it.
Yes, absolutely. I remember when I first started sex, I thought doggy style was like I had to be on all fours and it was like very, like I had to be very vulnerable, like, you know, that like typical dog looking stance. And I was like, that's doggy. And I have to look like a fool. But so I love that we're exploring it a little bit more.
Yeah, it's easy to think that. I mean, where else do we get the information? But then it's like, well, dogs do it this way.
I
so
know,
it must be this way. Yeah, but there's a zillion ways to have fun with it.
Well, let's get into some of those ways. So what are some like variations on that typical like on all fours, very vulnerable position that we are picturing?
Sure. Yeah, one version is standing, which is great.
Okay.
And that one's really helpful for shower sex. It's very slippery in a bathtub. It's hard to get two bodies laying down. So if you're standing and you can be stable, it's a nice position for that. It's also a good position standing if the receiving person is pregnant, or if you're feeling really self-conscious about some part of your body. For example, you're feeling really bloated and you really don't want someone looking at your belly today or something. It's sometimes, even though there is that vulnerability of, you know, this position does bring up some vulnerable feelings for a lot of people, I think it can also bring a sense of safety and comfort, which is hot because then you're more relaxed and then you have more pleasure. Yeah, so that's one of the great ones is to try it standing up and at different angles. You know, you can also do it like with one person kind of bent over furniture, leaning onto a bed.
I like that.
Yes.
I like the options. With standing up, like getting specific. So if I love to get specific, it's really important to me. So would the person that is being penetrated like be kind of like leaning forward because they would need to, right, in order to get that right angle?
The actual right angle?
Not
90 degrees?
Well,
I mean, whatever
I don't know.
Yeah.
Not the ruler. No. Yeah, I would say it's generally speaking, that you have to find an angle that works for you. And that's going to be different for every person, for every pairing, for, you know, how you're feeling that day. But generally speaking, the person in front will either, like if you're in the shower, for example, the person in front could put their palms against one wall of the shower and bend forward for support. Or maybe they're bending onto a bed, which is also nice if you're just tired and it's like a lot of energy.
Oh my God.
Move a lot. I don't know. I find it like a soothing position.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm glad you brought that up because I would do that. I would switch to that if I was just kind of tired. Like I'm here for them, but I was like, you go have fun. Take me from behind. And then I just like lay down on the bed. It's like, isn't this great for both of us?
Aren't we both winning?
We're both winning here, I think. So kind of every position where someone says like, I want to take you from behind is doggy then because it's behind you.
I mean, it could be the case. I mean, I think there are so many positions. People make up their own positions. Like we think of, you know, there's doggy, there's missionary, there's cowboy, like there's these like stereotypical positions, but really there's so many variations and people come up with their own, you know, varieties. Like you could do doggy style where you're both facing different directions, which I know when you're just thinking about that might take like a little mind twist, but it can totally work. You can use a strap on, like there's so many things you can do. So I wouldn't say that every position from behind is doggy style, but if you define doggy style as like any sort of entry that way, then yeah, as long as you like the term, then I would use it.
That seems really fair. Both of you facing different directions. I'm going to think about that one for a while.
How would that work?
I feel like a double-edged strap-on.
Well,
Double-edged
because you can also
sword?
use
I don't know.
you can also use your fingers, right? Like
Okay.
there's very flexible toys.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's so many different ways. You wouldn't like have a penis and a vagina and then just like pivot and twist. I wouldn't recommend doing that.
That's fair.
People could potentially get hurt that way. I'm sure that's been known to happen. So yeah, I would just, be careful and be reasonable about it. But
Mhm.
you could just really play with it and just see where it goes. Like if you've never done it before, I think it's a nice thing to just explore.
Mhm.
And sometimes starting in the knee position is a good idea. But also if you have bad knees or your knees are just sore that day,
That's me.
or after a while when you're on your knees, anyone needs to like switch things up.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I have really bad knees and I have like one of those calcium buildups on my knee and it really hurts if I'm on them for too long. So I like the variations. Don't be sad. I'm okay.
Yeah. That's such a big thing though with all positions is we don't often hear about them in terms of like comfort
Right.
or
Right.
stability and pain. Like we hear, what's the hottest position, which is cool. Of course, we want to know what's the most
Mhm.
pleasurable positions. But most people experience pain at some point.
Yeah.
And many people experience pain chronically. So really working with your body and if something hurts, shift, like change positions.
So why would people want to do doggy? Like, are there areas that you're reaching from that position that you can't in other positions?
It's a really good way to reach the G spot or the P spot. Some people call it the A spot, the prostate. So if
Okay.
you enjoy depth or if you want to explore either of those areas, it's a really, really good way because of the angles and just the way that you can reach in a really kind of simple way.
Gosh, so the A spot is the prostate.
Yes. Some people call it the A spot, I think, because it's like anal entry, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've heard it called the A spot. I usually say P spot, but then I think some people hear P like
Yeah.
urine, which would be okay too if that's where the pleasure was, but that's not what we're talking about.
Right.
So yeah, it's a really good way to have that kind of pleasure, especially if you're like, I want to feel G spot pleasure and I haven't before, or you just know you love that. Like you, and the internal clit, which is right there with the G spot. When you get really turned on internally, if you have a vulva, it's so exciting and your whole body turns on. Like you get that full body arousal feeling and your orgasms are stronger. So it's really, really good for those reasons.
See, I didn't realize that doggy style was a position that you could reach the G spot. I guess I never was like thinking about that in my head because I wasn't assuming that it was hitting towards the front, which is usually where the G spot area is, right?
Yeah. So the G spot usually, and everyone's a little bit different,
Mhm.
but it's a few inches in, you hear the advice is often like you insert 2 fingers and do the come hither motion, right?
Mhm.
Which can be true for a lot of people, but it's good to explore and just see where you feel that. But the internal clit, wraps around the vagina on the inside. So there's so much potential to reach all of that. Yeah. And if you've just experienced orgasm, it can also be a great position to continue feeling that pleasure and then maybe, have your multiples.
Okay. I've never had an orgasm during sex. So I've never had multiple orgasms during sex either. So that's good to, piggy bank in the back of the head. Just
Yeah.
for future
And that's
reference.
okay too. Definitely if people are hearing that, they're like, that's not how I experience orgasm. That's totally fine and normal. A lot of folks are like that. So yeah, but it's not really one you can play with too much with masturbation, unlike, some other positions, unless you like put a strap on like against, I don't know, or you have like a sex doll or something, maybe robot.
Sex
There's
robot.
options.
Yeah,
I
totally
mean,
versatile.
science these days really
Science.
has evolved. So if you
Yes.
have a sex robot that wants to take it from behind, take you from behind. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with sex robots.
Not familiar.
I am wondering about the actual, I never really know what to call it. The stroke, I guess. So, the in and out. Is there... I know that when I've done doggy style, sometimes it's just too much. I feel like the partner goes just in and out, and that doesn't feel very good. So do you have suggestions for, what the actual stroke should be? And, maybe how to, as the giver, move your hips, that sort of stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think making sure that you've warmed up together first or on your own beforehand, whichever you want, but I think making sure that your body is aroused can be helpful for that. But also, if you experience sensitivity from deep penetration, definitely vocalizing that and just, asking someone to slow down. And you can say it in a really nice way. Saying it feels so good when you move slower is a good way rather than like, you really just move too fast.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think taking your time can be helpful. Using lube, of course, is always helpful. And yeah, you don't have to go super deep. We're talking about depth. A lot of people like it for that reason, but it doesn't have to be that. And then also some people call it the jackhammer move. They're like in and out, in and out, in and out. And I have a feeling that a lot of folks do that because they see vibrators and toys that go really fast and move a lot. That is not something to replicate with a penis or a finger or anything else. So I think the intention is very good there. And maybe they've seen it in porn and it's being presented as something that feels good. But what feels good to you is what feels good to you. So it's important to know what works well for you. And that is something you can do during masturbation, is practice with like just different intensity and speeds, whether, it doesn't have to be trying to do like rear entry or vaginal from the rear. I think just knowing what works for you can be helpful. And then you can always ask someone to like move harder and faster when you're ready, but you'll know when you're ready. You can feel it when your body's like, oh, I want more intensity. But another hot thing to say is just keep doing that. Like that, what you're doing exactly right now when they're moving slower, I want more of that.
Positive reinforcement.
Right? Who doesn't want to hear that? Yes.
Exactly. Are there any other tools you can use to control the depth in Doggy? I feel like I've heard of a tool. I just forget the name of it now.
Oh, there is something. Is it O-Nut?
O-Nut. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
so there are accessories you can use, and O-Nut is one, which also can be helpful for anyone who's had any kind of physical or emotional trauma that it feels too intense to have a lot of like fast movement or deep penetration. I've heard those tools described as like pretty healing and empowering, which can be great. You can also start with small toys, start with a finger. If you're having sex with someone who has a very large penis and you're not used to that or not so interested in being fully in depth penetrated, you can ask for just the tip. And also if you say, oh my gosh, you're so big, could you please, let's just go easy and start with the tip.
Right. That could only be a good thing to hear, I would assume.
I think folks appreciate it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if you're the receiver too, I remember when I first tried this position, I was so embarrassed at the end of it because I had gotten so out of sync with the person behind me.
Yes.
Because I thought I was supposed to be moving as well. And if I wasn't moving, I wasn't contributing to like the position.
Rhythm.
And so maybe that was just me not knowing how to do it. But also, is the receiver, like, can they do anything while they're getting it? What can they do?
I love that question. Yeah. So you can sit there or stand there and be pretty still and receive. You can also move. Now, if you both are moving a lot, that's when things can get difficult. And actually, right? And I answer a question with a sex therapist on my podcast each week. And I recently had a question about slipping out.
Yes.
Yeah, from someone who said that their every boyfriend they'd had, like their penis kept slipping out. And one of the reasons for that is the two things you mentioned, jackhammer moves, where it's like really, really fast, and or two people trying to like, move at the same time. And that can get tough. So if you feel uncomfortable not moving, like you want to be there still, but you're like feeling a little funny about that, which is fine. There are other things you could do. If you have a vulva, you can play with your external clit. You can reach around and, tussle the person behind you, like their hair. There are things you can do like with your hands and stuff like that. It's just two pelvises like moving a lot can get a little chaotic. So I think that probably happens a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'd hope so.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that was a repressed memory for me. Because I'll be the first to admit, I'm not a fan of doggy style because it's just never worked for me. And I think all of these reasons that we're talking about are exactly why. Because it's like, I wanted to be an active participant too, which I thought there was kind of only one way to do that. And when we're both moving, it was just not good.
It's just not.
Nobody's getting pleasure.
I feel like the only way of movement that I've felt be successful is like I'm just a little bit more like fluid. So like I move when they like come up against me.
I'm so bad at being fluid though. And I'm so bad at letting somebody else lead. So like dancing and stuff is just, I'm rigid. I'm so rigid.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the only way I thought that I could kind of like be involved. So I'm glad that there's like, you know, more people in other ways.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do. And another thing you could toy around with if you're interested is becoming an active receiver, really becoming proactive about accepting and experiencing. You can use your voice for that, you know, moaning and dirty talk and that kind of thing. You know, there's a lot you can do. But it's also okay if that's just not your thing. Like it's always okay if it's not your thing.
Right.
You don't have to love doggy style. But yeah, if it's a more of a case of like, I'm really curious and I want to experience this pleasure, but also I do this thing and it feels funny.
Yeah. Yes.
Those are always workaroundable, like always.
Oh, I love that. Because I've always wondered, why does it not work for me?
Yeah.
Why me? What am I doing? And now I know.
It's
I'm
because the world needs us to ask these questions and then work through it for them.
Yeah.
We volunteer. And I feel like another thing with this position that kind of makes people feel uncomfortable is like the amount of air that kind of can get shoved up a vulva area if you're in doggy style, which leads then to queefing and more embarrassing things. So how do we work with that?
Yeah, good point. Definitely. So queefing happens. It just does. It's, you know, we're dealing with all these parts and bodily fluids and air, and it's not gas. And if you pass gas, that's also normal. Like these things just happen. However, I completely get that it's not like the ideal thing for a lot of folks. If you're feeling self-conscious about queefing or noises or air, I would say like play music or erotica or something.
Yeah.
You know, something with a lot of moaning in it. You won't hear a little like puff of air. I mean, it's so normal. So I think also sometimes, again, you could say something like, when I get really turned on, sometimes there's just like this air noise. I'm so hot you're making me so hot. Because I think really it's not about, if you were masturbating and that happened, you wouldn't care.
Right.
It's really, you're concerned that the person you're with is judging you for this.
Yes.
And 99% they aren't. The other 1% doesn't deserve you.
Yeah. There we go. Thank you for that.
That's the queefing advice we've been waiting for.
If queefing had any other type of sound other than fart, I would be fine. And I would be
if it was a
happy. If it was like,
like a cough or a kiss.
Maybe you can invent something. Maybe there's some virtual reality
like
thing
a kazoo you shove up there.
Yeah. Make it a little sexy moan or like a,
oh my
hey,
God.
baby.
You've got mail.
That is amazing. When you said that, I just had this flash of like a science fiction TV show or something where like Alexa gets mixed up with the queefing radar or something.
Yes, this is it.
Oh, this is why we're here. This is what we need to invent. Oh my gosh. When they invent that for queefing, we're going to circle back, have this again, and figure out a way to make that show happen where Alexa gets mixed up with the queef bot.
I love this. I'm down.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. That's so funny.
Queefing it's embarrassing. I mean, it shouldn't be, but it feels, I don't know. It's happened to me one time that I remember, I guess, maybe. Suppressed other things.
Yeah.
And I was like 16 and it was like, I was getting fingered, I guess, in doggy style. And it was the most, I just like,
robust.
I like fell down. I wasn't talking about the actual queef. I just like felt like crumpling into a heap.
Yeah.
And I just stared him dead in the eyes and I was like, I did not fart. And he was like, okay. He did not care in the least.
Yeah.
So
I don't remember. I think I've told a story where I queefed once the first time I was fingered. I don't even think he remembers. He's still my friend. I could probably ask. I won't, but I could. And then probably a couple times during sex where like you get up and it's like, and you're like, well, don't do that as I'm walking. That's just shameful. Like, because at least during sex, it would be like more of a thing. But I feel like another thing that also just happens is buttholes in this position. So since I haven't ever been behind, how visible is the butthole in this position in the doggy style?
Oh, so can someone see your own butthole? They'd have to like open your cheeks.
Okay.
Unless you have like an outie or something. I don't know.
Can you have an outie butthole?
I don't think so.
I was like, I never knew.
I don't think you need to worry about that. Although, again, if it's something that worries you, sometimes bringing things up and just having a conversation about it could be helpful. Some people find it more embarrassing to say, I really would like you to not look at my butthole while we're playing. But yeah, the one thing that is important though is making sure that you know which hole is going to be involved. Like anal should never just happen impromptu. Mm-hmm. It does happen that way. That's actually the first time I experienced anal was an oops, wrong hole. And it was enjoyable, thankfully, because it wasn't like the first thing that happened. And it was also like, oh my gosh, we just discovered this new planet because, we were each other's like not first partner, but very close and just learning a lot. Mm-hmm. And it was like, oh my goodness, this is happening. But generally speaking, that's not a pleasant experience. And it should not be, I think, because again, it's the same reason that queefing can feel embarrassing. No one queefs on TV during sex. No one queefs in sexy movies, right? We don't see it anywhere. Yeah. Everything looks so like perfect. And it reminds me, like porn reminds me of cooking shows. You know how if you followed a whole recipe on camera and actually followed the whole recipe, you would make a mess and there'd be stuff everywhere and you would probably make weird noises. Like all these things would happen, but they're like, blah, blah, blah. And then voila, here's this perfect cake. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what we're expecting from sex, including from doggy style and all these things.
That makes so much sense. And that's such a good comparison of like the cooking show thing.
If you're going to make a cake, there's going to be a mess.
Yeah. Because they really do that editing where it's like, oh, nothing messy just happened with porn and cooking shows, which makes complete. So I also saw a weird comment, and it was a TikTok. I'm on TikTok a lot, where they've said that the butthole puckers when you're having sex and it goes like open and close. And I just want to confirm, I know you're probably not the person that I should
I'm
be
very
asking.
curious. Keep sharing.
But I think a lot of people liked it and a lot of people like agreed with it. And I was like, I didn't know that your butthole would pucker when you're having sex. And they especially said it during doggy style.
When you say open and close, like the motion you made with your hands felt like it was like repetitive. Is it like, or you mean just like it has a suction-y?
Suction-y, like
this,
more like lips, like that kind of a way.
Yeah, there is a sense of that. Yeah, I mean it's a really tight hole, and there can be that feeling, but that's never been something that I mean I don't think like you're playing and you feel this intense puckering. It's not something I think you need to be too concerned about.
Okay. Because I'd never heard of it before. And then so many people, did you see it?
I did see the TikTok, yes.
Yeah. Where I was like, why are so many people agreeing?
Stop. Well, you can even, I mean, you know how you can do Kegels and you can feel you could feel your butthole too doing the same. Like you can, you can squeeze it and open it and close it kind of, right? Like there are muscles there. And that can be an active, fun way of playing. You know, you're just engaging. It's not like making out, kissing, puckering.
What came to my head was Morse code.
Oh my God, with your butt?
Yeah, but...
Okay, put that into the queef movie.
Yeah, there we go.
Like if you could, you could say stuff.
You can say stuff.
If you came up with a good
was
quote.
Holding you hostage during your doggy style and you had to be like, call 911.
Oh, we have invented so many things in a matter of 10 minutes, and I love it.
My God.
Oh, that's hilarious. But Morse code. We'll write a book.
Yes, we will.
So also with clitoral stimulation, you brought that up as like someone as a receiver could be doing. So what are some good toys to kind of bring into the mix as the receiver?
Yeah, great question. So if you want external clit stim, like a womanizer would be good. If you enjoy that suction feeling on your clit. See, it's so funny in another context. We're like, ooh, suction.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Totally. That's so funny.
Yeah. And then another toy, which wouldn't be for external clit though, would be any kind of dildo or again, strap on from behind. And also if you're somebody who wants a lot of fullness, not just penetration, but you like a really hard erection, cock rings are good for that as well. And then again, your fingers can be really helpful. Even rubbing lube and massaging your vaginal lips while you're playing can be really hot.
Can the giver also be like pleasuring the receiver in multiple ways?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. A lot of folks really appreciate like their nipples being played with during doggy style and other positions too. So the giver could be playing with their own nipples, playing with your nipples. They could be kissing your back. They could be pulling your hair if that's something you enjoy. Yeah, and really both people are active. I mean, we say giver and receiver because we're talking about the penetration. Like
Yes.
I was going to say penetrator and penetrating, but I don't think that's the word. Yeah. So both people can do a lot. It does actually free you up in a lot of ways, as long as you're stable. You know,
Right.
Again, like if you're in the shower, you need to brace yourself, and you might need to use your hands. But yeah, I think it's a nice freeing position in a lot of ways.
And also you mentioned cock rings. So I guess I don't really know how that's used. How are cock rings used?
Yeah, so there are rings that you slide over a penis. Some of them go to the base of the penis, and some of them go over the balls as well. And essentially, they trap blood flow, or they keep more blood in the penis, which is what creates the erection. So folks who just want to have a longer lasting erection, a harder erection, or they also have cock rings that have vibrators, little tiny ones attached. So that's really nice if you like external clitoral stim. So for any position that you're being penetrated, it can be really nice because I've heard from people who are like, I love like the people use it all different terms, but like missionary or woman on top or whatever, all these other positions that are common. They're like, I really enjoy that, but I never experience orgasm because I like the external stim, which you can get from rubbing your pelvises together, depending, but it is a nice way to, if that's how you come, to make sure it happens and both people feel more pleasure because more blood, it's just like the clitoris hard on, right? Like more blood is just exciting. It makes you feel good.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Like, is the ring pleasurable for the person wearing it as well?
Yeah, but you don't want to wear it for more than, I think the guideline is 20 to 30 minutes at the most.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because again, trapping blood flow, you don't want to like cross circulation or anything. And that's another reason to try it on in advance. Make sure that you have, like, I would recommend starting with a simple, stretchy one. They do have those that are made out of like leather and metal and all kinds of different materials. But those I would say are more advanced for people who've just had more experience.
Yeah.
But you want something that's easy to get on and off for sure.
Absolutely. Every time we've brought up different things that you can incorporate during sex, like in our interviews, it's always been like, try it first. So you're not, like, don't try it for the first time during sex because then it's going to ruin the whole experience. So I feel like encouraging practice is so important too. Because people don't, like, I'm the first to admit that I don't practice half what I want to do. And then I try it out for the first time and I'm like, oh, that did not look as sexy as I wanted it to. But it's like practicing is so good. It helps like relax you and it can help you and your partner kind of get on the same page early on.
Yeah, and it builds anticipation because you're like, oh, it's people sometimes say that, scheduling sex can be kind of seem boring or not as fun and exciting. They want it to be spontaneous. But when you think about anything exciting, we always plan. For the most part. I mean, sometimes there's like this rando surprise, but if you are planning a vacation, it's part of that. And the more anticipation you feel, the hotter the sex is. And sometimes the anticipation is the hottest part.
Because then you're having like that buildup all day and you guys are kind of like teasing each other throughout the day because you know that the big thing is coming later that night. You would assume. I haven't ever had
Hopefully.
one of those scheduled, but it sounds fun.
It's true. And if you try something during sex and you practiced it or you didn't and it doesn't go well, I mean, that's super normal too. It's if you can laugh about it and move on, you know, sometimes sex stops and that's fine. Maybe not what you were hoping for, but everyone has these like laughy kind of, oh my gosh, I can't believe that just happened. Like I was having sex with someone once and we tried this. We called it the slug. I don't even know what it was. This was years ago. It was like this, a penis cozy, if you will. So it went flying, like it literally just flying across the room and hit the wall. It was just like slimy. I mean, it's probably not made out of body safe materials.
Oh my God.
But we, you know, could laugh about it. And that stuff just happens. Sometimes you need to just try something goofy and funny and hilarious, and that's fine.
Oh my God,
Absolutely.
that's so funny.
A willingness to accept that like it is going to be messy and funny and gross and weird, and it's not always going to go perfect, even if you do plan it.
Yes, absolutely.
There's no such thing unless you're a porn star, and that perfect took you 12 hours.
Right.
And you got paid
And
for it.
editing and assistants and makeup and fans and like, you know.
And I also think that making sure that you're with someone that if you mess up, you don't feel like the world just end and like they're going to judge
Right.
you, you know, and kind of just putting enough effort into who you're with, no matter what you're doing, just because you don't want to be around someone that if you queef or if you did something, you feel like they're just going to get up and walk out. Because that's also not a good scenario. So,
Yeah, that's true. If you don't feel a sense of freedom to explore and have fun, that's usually a flag. Yeah.
right. And so talking about partners and who we're doing this with. So this position can feel a little like disconnected. So how do we make doggy style a little bit more intimate? Like how is this an intimate position as well?
It's so funny because I learned that many people feel that way, that it's not very intimate. And for some reason, I've always found it to be very intimate. So I think it depends on, you know, how you perceive it. I think one way is to have your bodies close together. I think it can be really comforting because the person behind you can wrap their arms around you, you know, if that feels really good, or you could hold the person in front of you if you're giving the pleasure. And there are a lot of ways to make it more intimate. One would be to have doggy style facing a mirror if you are missing the eye contact piece, which is also really hot because you're watching yourselves have sex. It's like in a real-time kind of sex movie about you.
About you, starring me.
Starring you, yeah.
Eye contact was the thing I was thinking about. Like that's the only thing I think is what make it intimate. I don't know. So doing it in front of a mirror could be spicy.
I have a logistical question. So with like if the person were to wrap their arms around you or you were to wrap your arms around, how would you do that? Because when I picture doggy style, like I picture having to like lean forward
Yeah.
enough.
So
like
the person behind you would have to lean as well.
okay. So you
And or
Let's
it
see, triangle.
doesn't have to be during the moving penetration. So maybe
Okay.
you've been playing with penetration for a while and you stop for a bit and you're just holding each other. You know,
Okay.
It doesn't have to all be at once.
That makes sense.
That sounds cute. Now it
Sweet,
sounds cute
sweet
and cuddly.
Mm-hmm.
Because you are like spooning in a way, as if you're doing the position where you're leaning over and the person on top is like leaning over on top of you. So it can feel kind of like an embrace more than just like a ramming from behind.
Yeah. And some people are not comfortable with eye contact.
Yeah.
So in those situations, I think it can be really helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That makes total sense. I'm really glad we were able to talk about that.
Because you were also concerned about it not being as intimate, right?
Yeah, that was one of my concerns. And it was that like space between our bodies that I think like, again, I had that very limited perception of what doggy style was. I'm on all fours, my partner's behind me. And so it's like, it just always felt like this super distant, like he was just fucking me.
Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
was the perception that it gave me. And so it just felt like, I guess this is like, if we want to fuck, then great. But
Right.
that's generally not the mindset that I'm in. So yeah, it
Yeah.
just never felt special.
Never felt special. Well, I think going back to the story that I brought up in the beginning, where it's like that would be the default position I would go to if I felt like I was kind of done, but like they wanted to. So I can get where it can have a connotation of not being as intimate because it's kind of just something that like, all right, now I don't do anything, you know?
Right.
But now we have all these different tools of what the receiver person could do to feel like more a part of it. Because that was another thing that I felt is like, I'm not doing anything though. You're just looking at my ass and you're just having sex with me is how it feels.
Yeah, that's so important. I think that's a good question to ask ourselves about so many sexual situations, but definitely any position that doesn't feel as intimate, asking yourself like, well, what does this mean to me? Even what does sex mean to me in like a broader way? But if you're hoping to connect with somebody and you want to both have pleasure, it's important to take those steps and to do that reflection. I also thought as you were sharing about the physical distance, you can also, the person behind you can do massage on your back, massage oil.
Nice.
They're wonderful, like body oils and sexy body paints and, frostings that are edible and lube that has good flavor, rubbing your back and your shoulders. Like there are ways to bring that, because I think that's a really important piece. If you're missing that, if you're like, we feel distance and it feels like you're fucking me, that's not a good way to start sex or engage in it.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I do. I love the idea of a massage. My goodness. And then like maybe incorporating like food play on your back, like you were saying. That is fun.
Have you ever played that game where like somebody writes a letter or draws something on your back or writes a word and you have to guess what it is?
Yeah. So kind of like that, but naked.
Yeah.
And I love it. Are there any other spicy ways to like zhuzh up doggy style? Like you just mentioned like 4 things and I'm like, oh my God, I want to do that. So any other things we can do in doggy style?
The picnic sounds really fun. Yeah. So thank you for mentioning that.
As long as it's not like spaghetti or something.
A Lunchable.
A Lunchable on your back.
That is really funny. I think one thing to consider would be to try it with switching positions with your partner. Like try it both ways. If that's something you're interested in, trying side-by-side doggy style could also be fun. And then you might have a little bit more of a physical connection feeling, because if you're laying down, you could really literally be spooning. And that's technically just like sideways doggy style. And then trying it in different rooms that you've never had sex before, like at the edge of the sofa, when you have privacy, unless you want to be watched and you have people's permission. If you're to the voyeurism thing. But I think those are some of the we've covered so many of the main ones. But I think letting your imaginations run wild is great. I love that you both came up with ideas. You're both like, I don't know about this position. And now you're like, I'm going to make a cake and put it on the back and write a letter on the back.
Exactly.
I'm going to propose on the back.
That's how I want to be proposed to.
Just set a ring on your back.
Just make my ass go. Yep. I love it.
We all have
put
to have
the
dreams.
ring on the cock ring.
Yeah, wow. Romantic. Aw.
Romantic.
Now you made a rom-com too.
I know. So many good ideas.
I'm wondering about, I think we read an article that you talked about doggy style, and you talked about incorporating the mouth as well. I would love if you could touch on that as well.
Yeah. The mouth is always a great thing to incorporate. Not always, but very, very often, I would say. Yeah, you can absolutely, I think, kissing backs and, working your mouth and all your erogenous parts, like really thinking beyond just the genitals. Because I think the way that you're talking about the perception of it, it sounds very just genitals. So when you think beyond that, and the mouth is actually, the nerves are connected to the internal clitoris nerves. Like it's the same kind of pathway, which is why making out turns on the internal clit. So anytime that you can work your mouth into, and like making out before doggy style is a great way to make the doggy style more pleasurable.
See, that's why I love kissing so much. It's because it's attached to my internal clit. I don't know why I'm looking at you like I'm telling you. But
I never said it wasn't.
I love kissing so much. And I feel like I've been with partners that don't like prioritize it. And I'm like, but that is my favorite part of foreplay. Like I love just the making out part. That's why I loved high school. I just made out with everyone and it was a great time.
That's awesome. And to me, that is sex. Like making out, that is just as valuable as penetration, as you can have wonderful sex with no penetration and just lots of kissing. It's a really erogenous part of the body for a lot of people, the mouth. And also we all have our own unique, erogenous zones. So not being afraid to explore those.
Yeah. And you also brought up doing it on the couch.
Mhm.
And so I have tried that a couple times and I get burnout in my legs. So do you have good tips for how to do it on the couch?
Do you mean like rug burn?
No, like my quads start like lighting up and I just don't know how to sustain the
oh,
position
yes.
for too long.
Okay, use a chair then. You could do sitting doggy style.
Oh, okay.
Mhm. Yeah, well, you sit on the lap of the person if you're receiving. So instead of being
Yeah.
the person in the front, yeah, you could totally do that. Let me think. You could also,
That's good. Sounds relaxing.
you could put more weight on your upper body. So if you're bending forward, you're talking about receiving, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you're bending forward and you'd want to move your center of gravity forward more. So you wouldn't want to be angled backward, but really put like your torso onto the couch.
Okay.
You don't have to have pressure on your knees.
Gotcha.
What about as the giver then? Like, because I imagine that would also be quite the burn on your
Quite
legs
the burn.
if you're standing up.
Yeah.
So I guess the same things would apply.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if the thing is with standing, it doesn't usually put the same strain on the knees as kneeling on the knees, right?
Mhm.
So usually it's the receiver who's feeling more of the strain. But that
Okay.
said, anybody could feel, strain during it. So yeah, you could both be on the couch. Like you could have one person in front who's more. It's so hard to describe for audio. Like I've tried to
I know.
I need like Barbies to be like, and there you go. But yeah, you put like if the person receiving puts most of their body on the sofa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so even their legs could be off, so hard, off the side,
Mm-hmm.
like hanging out the end. And then the person behind is like body surfing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think I can picture it.
Yeah. There's just so much. This is why we need our YouTube.
Yeah.
Because then we could just have diagrams and then just be like, go to the YouTube. Anyway, I
Yeah,
love that.
it's hard to explain for sure.
Mhm.
I have sex positions in my Girl Boner book, and
Okay.
my editor was like, okay, so she had to like try them with clothes on with her partner just to be like, am I understanding this right? Because it's so technical, and when you say all these things, it can be hard to imagine. But
Yes.
I think we're doing a great job.
Like if we missed a step, it's like, well, your directions do this, and then I get here. So we need to add another step because people are going to get confused.
Right. Yes. Proceed with caution.
Proceed
for
with
all of
caution.
this. Yes.
I like the switching up of the rooms that you do it in because I feel like that adds a whole other level to sex
Mhm.
because all of a sudden it's kind of completely different. I don't know. So I like living room stuff. I've done that a couple times. But you also mentioned I don't know, it's probably a completely different topic, but voyeurism with consent. So how do you get consent if you want to explore voyeurism?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one would be to partake in a sex positive community, like start getting to know, there are dating apps even where you can just meet people who are into the kinks that you're into. So that could be a good way. Yeah, you'd probably have to find some sex positive folks, or you could hire somebody, like sex workers or something.
Okay.
Or you could have your partner watch you, which if people have the voyeurism thing and into the mirror can give you that similar sense. Or even
Mhm.
I think having the windows open or the shades drawn when you're not actually being watched, but you have the perception of it, because imagination is actually the hottest thing.
Mhm.
And that's what we
Absolutely.
get out of a lot of these things, right? It's these sensations and these thoughts and these feelings we're having. And so I think you can create it kind of artificially too.
Oh, I love those tips. Those are great. I was like, do you just have to knock on your neighbor's door and be like, do you mind?
Hey, Doug.
Can I borrow some sugar? And also,
Also,
will you watch me?
will you watch us have sex later real quick? It's just an afternoon thing.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah.
Good. Duly noted. Duly noted.
Proceed with caution.
Proceed with caution.
Well, is there anything else that you feel like we didn't touch on, or any like big mistakes that you think people make that you want to help them avoid, or just really anything having to do with doggy style that you want to end with?
Gosh, I think you've asked such wonderful questions. I think we covered so much, but I think if it's something that's new to you or to a relationship, just talk about it a little bit. And it could be finding a scene in an erotica story. You can find a story about anything.
Mhm.
You could also find either a porn video or They have, I'm forgetting words today, but there's, what is it called? Make Love Not Porn. Are you familiar?
No.
Cindy Gallup, she's incredible. And she started a company, but they're everyday people who are not performers who film themselves during having sex and their videos. And they're not posed to the camera. They're not produced like porn. It's real sex. So there are ways to kind of show examples, to introduce it. I also think, though, positions are one of those things you can bring up during sex. A lot of times we hear, don't talk about a new thing. Don't be like, do you want to have an orgy like right before you're happening? But something like a position, you can just, use body language and talk and explore. And so I think always starting with just that curiosity and starting, as you both brought up, like your perceptions about it, and even asking why you're interested in trying something, because sometimes we have a perception about something, we're not interested, but we're like, oh, people keep saying this is hot.
Exactly.
That's not necessarily a reason to try it. You might end up liking it, which could be cool, but I think no one should ever feel like pressured or less sexually cool. Whenever I interview someone who has had, like an orgy, or I interviewed someone about threesomes, I get messages from folks who are like, I feel like I'm not that like, cool sexually. Like I've had one partner and we are monogamous. And I'm like, I am monogamous. I'm not really looking at for a threesome. You don't have to and this is my job. Like I'm super sex positive. So starting where you are is kind of my always advice around sexual empowerment, giving yourself a lot of compassion and grace, and just having fun and knowing it's a journey. I'm not talking doggy style, is not the journey of it, but doggy style is a journey too. I just think it sounds really profound.
Yes, I love it. Your doggy style journey. We're all on one now.
We're all on one. Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much. I feel like communication as well is such a great thing to just end with always, because it can't be said enough that that's something that should always be incorporated into your sex life. So yeah, perfect. And how, I'm going to steal your line. Go ahead. How can people stay connected with you after the episode?
Thanks for asking. So they can go to girlboner.org. It's a good hub for all my everything. And you can just search for Girl Boner Radio on whatever podcast app you're listening on.
I think we should have that be our intro and outro for every single episode.
That could be the song that we do.
We can always just choose a different animal. Because what was I the other week?
You were a rooster.
I was a rooster. I was really good at being a rooster, too. So we should just find our secret talents.
Maybe we have a career in
animal voice acting. I think you're right. Fuck this shit.
Bye, bitches.
Bye.
You won't be seeing us next week.
We're voice actors now for animals. But for this week, I will first thank August so much for being on the podcast. We had so much fun talking about doggy style, and thank you to our listeners for tuning in.
Yes, and if you have a few minutes, head on over to Apple Podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe to Honeydew Me. It means the absolute world to us. Just the absolute world.
So aggressive.
And if this is the episode that's going to get you to leave a review, go ahead and leave a little dog emoji so we know it was doggy style that got you there, honey.
Doggy style can take us anywhere.
Anywhere and everywhere, baby.
Everywhere. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.